I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce today's presenter, Dave Bosham, Senior Form I-9 and E-Verify speaker at U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. Dave joined U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services in 2008, following his retirement from the U.S. Army. He has conducted close to 700 Form I-9 and E-Verify presentations to nationwide audiences, including elected officials, immigration attorneys, compliance personnel, to human resources, and payroll professionals. In 2016, the American Payroll Association presented Dave with their annual Government Partner Award in recognition of his service as a government agent to the payroll community nationwide. In 2014, the AR Society of Human Resources Management awarded Dave with their annual Friend of HR Award for his work with their members regarding Form I-9 and E-Verify. Dave's military assignments were numerous in the infantry arena. His military service decorations include the Legion of Merit. Dave's originally from West Virginia, but now makes his home in historic Virginia. Now I will turn the presentation over to Dave.
Hey, thanks a lot, Heidi, and a quick shout out to AccuSource for having me back on. We've done some sessions for AccuSource for several years now on topics of Form I-9 and E-Verify, which are the two topics, forms, and programs that is in the division that I'm assigned to within DHS of USCIS. It's the verification division. I am one of the engagement outreach speakers, if you will, where all we are is subject matter experts on the I-9 and E-Verify. Work in our Washington, D.C. office, but we also have our outreach offices in Buffalo, New York, Lincoln, Nebraska, and Los Angeles. So once again, thanks to AccuSource for having me back on to talk about this session, which really, before I jump onto that first slide, I need to lay some of the groundwork if we can, okay? This session is about the temporary policy changes to the I-9 and E-Verify due to COVID. Yes, when COVID from our end, when we started seeing COVID affected businesses, meaning businesses were working from home, they were still hiring individuals, they were conducting business, but some of your business operations, how you onboard process with various individuals, obviously had to change. And when that changed, it was going to be very hard to be able to comply with various I-9 processes with those changes that occurred due to COVID. So DHS provided some temporary policy changes basically to assist employers during the I-9 E-Verify process. And that's the basis of this session here today, is basically to talk about them. There's only about 6 slides we're going to talk about, but we're going to go into detail. I'm going to give a lot of examples. We do encourage your questions. As you heard Heidi state, within 24 hours after today's session, you're going to get a recording of this. So feel free to take some notes, but know that you're going to get this slide deck, and you'll be able to pull some information off of that I'm going to refer to, okay? So right off the bat, let me go ahead and discuss 2 other agencies that have their hands in the I-9 E-Verify process, if you will, meaning ICE, our sister agency within DHS, Immigration Customs Enforcement. They're the agency that does the audits on the I-9s, okay? We here at USCIS, we don't do the audits. We provide the form, the material you see and the manuals on our I-9 Central website, which is your one-stop shop for everything on the I-9, and everything with E-Verify. So ICE does the audits. Also, over at the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, IER section, Immigrant Employee Rights section, it's their section that enforce those anti-discrimination provisions of the INA. Now, I know that's a long sentence. Dave, what does that mean to me? If you were to go to hire me, and after you've hired me and we go to complete the I-9, if you were to tell me which documents you wanted me to provide, I think we all know in the I-9 community that that's a no-no. You can't tell an employee which documents to provide with the I-9. You show them the list of acceptable documents, and the employee needs to provide either a list A or a B and C document. If you had told me which documents or even hinted as to which documents you would like me to provide, I could pick up the phone and call DOJ's IER section and file a complaint. It's their office that more than likely would pick up the phone and call your office and tell you, hey, you can't do that, okay? So that's why I say there's two additional agencies that have their hands in the I-9 E-Verify process. So let's go ahead and bring it up to about the past year. And it was around March of last year that DHS noted that, hey, we're starting to see more and more employers, as I mentioned a while ago, that are starting working from home. They're hiring individuals. They're not having that face-to-face contact. They're still completing the onboard paperwork, but how are they going to complete the I-9 under the current instructions of the I-9 based on some of these changes? So with that, let's jump into our first slide, okay? Now I'm going to review each one of these slides, give you a quick overview, and then we're going to go into detail already. So it was back on March 20th, as you see there at the top paragraph, where DHS and ICE announced the flexibility in complying with requirements related to the I-9 due to COVID. Okay, now we'll talk about it's been extended through January 31st here in just a second. Basically what this slide says is, hey, DHS realized once again employers were working from home. Let's say all of your HR office is working from home, okay? And I am going to use just Heidi as an example, okay? Today Heidi is going to be an HR director. And let's say Heidi, just for the sake, okay, let's say Heidi is in California. And for this example, I'm in California. Heidi has called, offered me a job. I accepted the job. But Heidi's office, due to COVID, maybe is all working from home right now. Heidi still needs to complete the I-9 with me. The current instructions of the I-9 states that she has to do that with me face-to-face, meaning I have to actually show her my documents in person. But here, effective March 20th of last year, that's where ICE came out and basically stated that, hey, employers, under certain situations, you could have an employee, once you hire them, you could have them fax, email, send you a picture of their list A or B and C document in order for you, the employer, to complete Section 2. That's the gist of this slide, but let's go into it step by step. Now, you see that highlight where this policy has been extended to January 31st. When this policy originally came out back in March 20th of last year, originally it stated, when it came out on March 20th, it stated that this policy is in effect for 60 days or within 3 days of the termination of the national emergency. 60 days from March 20th was right around, don't quote me, right around May 18th, okay? A day or so before May 18th occurred, ICE came out and they extended it for another 30 days. And around that month later in June, they extended it another 30 days. And then in July, they extended it for another 30 days. And then in August, they extended it for 60 days. So you see, it's been extended. Right now, it's been extended all the way through January 31st. You say, well, Dave, today's the 26th. Hey, what's going on the 31st? Hey, do jot this down. You're going to see it on our resource page toward the end, but I want you to be able to have this. Jot down I-9 Central. It's our I-9 Central is our I-9 website. It's your one-stop shop for everything on the I-9. If you simply Google I-9 Central, you'll be able to bring it up. When you bring up I-9 Central on the home page, on the left-hand side, you'll see a tab where it says Related News, I-9 Related News. When you click on that, that'll bring up any news and any changes to the I-9. The minute something changes with the I-9, whether it be an update, maybe this date has been extended out, we're going to put it in that I-9 Central Related News tab. If I were you, I'd be checking that tab starting the afternoon of the 30th of January, but it probably won't hit on the site until the 31st. So you'll know, hey, this policy that Dave is talking about, the temporary policy, Has ICE extended it? And if they haven't, what's the current guidance then? So do check that out. Now, let's talk about what happens in the event, and let's go through that process where I said Heidi had offered me a job. I accepted the job. Due to this temporary policy, all of her office is working from home. All our HR, payroll folks are all working from home. Heidi calls me and says, "Hey, Dave, we're not, even though we've hired you, we're going to complete all the paperwork, onboarding paperwork, whether it be online or she's going to fax me, page 1 of the I-9 and page 2 and the instructions or whatever." I complete page 1. I send it back to Heidi. Heidi then has provided me the list of acceptable documents, and she says, "Dave, I need you to provide me a list A or a list B or C documents." That first bullet there that you see on the slide, number 1, this policy only applies to employers and workplaces that are operating remotely. When it says you also have to, the employer needs to provide written documentation on the remote onboarding or telework policies. I'm sure you've probably, done a little bit of changes or tweaks to how you're conducting your day-to-day business if you have those, in a memorandum, or it doesn't have to be in an SOP, standard operating procedure binder or anything. Or if you say, hey, for the purposes of the I-9, with this temporary policy where we can accept copies of documents to complete the Section 2, you're going to see here on about the third slide from now where there's going to be a hyperlink when you get the recording of this, where you can go on to the site and run off that ICE temporary policy. Don't worry, it's not pages long. It's only about the length of your computer screen. And you can just adopt that. Hey, for the purposes of completing the I-9 and making copies and just accepting copies, right now we're adopting the ICE policy in full. So when Heidi has called and provided me the I-9 to complete, she has shown me the list of acceptable documents. And if I look at that list and I say, hey, I want to provide her a copy of my passport, I can scan, email, I can take a picture of my passport and forward it on to Heidi. I could Skype, Zoom, whatever, that passport. And with this temporary policy, Heidi can accept that copy to complete Section 2. Now, you see the third comment. When Heidi gets that copy, what does she do? She would do just as if she sees the original document. She takes a look at it, inspects it. On that third bullet, it says, after Heidi has written in under Section A of the I-9 all the information in regards to my passport, just as you normally would. But then in the additional information block, once again, the third bullet, she's simply going to enter in remote inspection completed on what month, day, and year. What day was it that Heidi saw that copy of my passport? She enters the month and day. That's all she needs to write in the additional information field. Now remember, this is just a temporary policy due to COVID. You're still going to have to see the original document when you return back to your normal business operations. So let's talk about the fourth and fifth comment there for a second. Don't type any of your questions in the chat feature, because I know you're probably already, I can imagine some of the questions you're thinking, but let's talk about them and let me give you some scenarios and definitions. So the fourth comment there, it's bold print. It says, within 3 business days of resuming normal business operations, you being Heidi or her office staff, needs to physically inspect the documents or document when the employee's present. So what do we mean by that? What does ICE mean by that? Remember, this is ICE's policy. So let's say, once again, Heidi, all of our office staff, they've been teleworking, they're working from home. Now they start returning to normal business operations. ICE defines that as if anybody's back in the office working and having that direct day-to-day contact with their employees, that constitutes resuming normal business operations. So if a Heidi has an office staff of 10 And she takes one, and one of her office staff goes back in the office, and let's say that's Cynthia. And Cynthia's back in the office working. That constitutes normal business operations. So within 3 days of your office resuming normal business operations, Cynthia, being the only office member back in the staff, she would need to call in those employees where you accepted a copy of their documents during the completion of the I-9. And within 3 days, she's going to have to physically inspect the document or documents that I had provided when we initially completed the I-9. In this example, remember, I provided Heidi my U.S. passport. Let me talk about the last bullet comment, and then let's provide a little bit more information on this. Once Cynthia is back in the office, or how many office staff members have gone back in there, which constitutes resuming normal business operations, Cynthia has me come in and says, hey, Dave, you showed us your U.S. passport. Yeah, we were able to accept a copy at that time, but due to the policy, now that we resume normal business operations, we have to inspect your document. Let's say I show her my U.S. passport. She holds it just like she would when she would complete the I-9 originally. And on that last bullet comment, it says, Cynthia is going to write COVID-19 documents physically examined on what month, day, and year. What month, day, and year did Cynthia actually see and hold my passport? That's all she's going to write in the additional information block. And then she's simply going to initial it, which means she's the one that inspected those original documents. Now, a couple questions have come back that we generally receive. Gets back to normal business operations. Well, Dave, so you're saying, and just to reiterate, if any one of those individuals within our office goes back into the office and they have direct contact with those employees, that constitutes resuming normal business operations, and that means that we can no longer accept copies of the documents that Cynthia or whoever's in the office, they would need to complete the I-9 just as pre-COVID-19. You would have to bring them in. But Cynthia also, within 3 days, any of those individuals where you accepted copies of the documents due to this temporary policy, she's going to have to see those documents and then write that information as you see in that fifth bullet there on the slide. The question also comes into play, well, hey, Dave, if you show Heidi, as you had mentioned, your passport, and once the company resumes business operations, in that example, Cynthia is back in the office, do you have to show Cynthia that passport? Can you show Cynthia another List A document or a B and C document instead? Yes, I can. You might say, well, Dave, since you showed Heidi your passport when you originally completed the I-9, when the company resumes business operations, and within those 3 days, Cynthia calls you in and says, hey, I need to see the document. Maybe you provide the driver's license, social security card. Where does she notate that on the I-9 that you showed her both of those documents, and where does she notate all that information? You take a blank page 1 of the I-9. A blank page 2. Simply write my name on the top. And then if I showed the driver's license, social security card there to Cynthia, she would write the information under List B of my driver's license, right? Just as you normally would. Under List C, all my social security card information. And then in the additional information block, she would write just as it says in the fifth bullet. Simply write COVID-19 documents physically examined on what month, day, and year, and initial it. Attach that to the I-9 that I initially did with Heidi. You might say, hey, Dave, we use an electronic I-9. And we're not sure if our electronic I-9 system will allow us to go in and do just a page 2 for that. We've asked ICE that, and ICE says, hey, in that instance, if your electronic I-9 software doesn't allow you to do that, pull out a blank page 2, fill it out, just as the instructions state right there, and then just follow that. Okay? Additionally, the question we've got about the resuming normal business operations. Remember, I told you Heidi's got an office staff of 10. Cynthia is the one that returned back into the office right now. The question that we've got is, hey, Dave, even though Cynthia's returned back in the office doors are still shut. They're locked. Cynthia doesn't have any day-to-day, face-to-face contact with the employees, new hires, etc. Does that mean we resume normal business operations? No. Okay. So take a look at this policy. Take a look at the hyperlink that you're going to see here, and I'm going to mention it when I show an additional slide here. I'm also going to show you that there's a link on our I-9 Central page on the FAQs, frequently asked questions, on these temporary policies. If you go to the I-9 Central homepage, on the left-hand side, you'll see an item there where you can bring up some questions and issues in regards to those temporary policies changes due to COVID. So that's one of the changes. Another change is in regards to the List B documents. List B documents. What do I mean by List B documents? We started seeing last spring also that there were various state or some government offices that started closing to the public. I.e., one of them was where you get your driver's license. Now, where I live in Virginia, we call it DMV, Division of Motor Vehicles. I know it's not called DMV around the country, but just apply that to whatever the name is at your state office where you get your driver's license. We started seeing where individuals, they had a driver's license that was about to expire. They tried to go to their DMV offices to try to get it renewed, but the DMV office was closed due to COVID. Now, granted, depending on each state DMV office, because remember, they run independently, so they have different rules and how they're servicing or assisting clients online, etc. Some DMV said, hey, you get your stuff renewed online by contacting this or that. Some states, I know when I checked in West Virginia here, probably about a month or two ago, it said that your existing driver's license, that once it expired, that they were actually extending that expiration date all the way to the end of the year. But still, you had individuals that had driver's license that were expiring. Maybe they didn't have a computer or they weren't tech savvy, and they said, hey, I don't want to mess with any of that stuff online. So here they're walking around with a driver's license as it expired. Let's say that same individual at the same time went to Heidi's office, applied for a position, was offered the job, accepted the job. Heidi went to complete the I-9 with them. She showed them a list of acceptable documents. The employee looking at that list saying, okay, she said I can provide a B and C document. Maybe that individual provided Heidi the driver's license and a Social Security card. When Heidi got the driver's license, she looked at it and said, oh, I can't accept that. It's expired. She tells that to the employee, and the employee goes, well, but I can't get it renewed because the DMV office is closed. That's where this temporary policy has come into play. Okay. You can accept an expired document, an expired List B document, temporarily for purposes of the I-9. Let's talk about that in this slide, okay? So beginning on May 1st of last year, any List B document set to expire on or after March 1st and not otherwise extended by the issuing authority, hold tight with that word there, you see their red bold print, may be treated the same as if the employee presented a valid receipt for an acceptable document. Well, that's a mouthful, Dave. Let's break that down. So yes, effective May 1st of last year, an employee could provide you a List B document, any List B document, because first we started out realizing that with the driver's license, where the DMV offices were closed. Then we were getting word of other List B documents on that list where individuals around the country were running into the same thing. Dave, I can't get into so-and-so office to get my federal or state ID because they're closed. You know, it has my picture and date, height, and weight and whatnot. So we went in and just changed it to all List B documents. They're expired as long as, look at the first sentence, as long as on the face of the List B document they wanted provided, it expired on or after March 1st of last year. So in this instance, if I wanted to provide during the hiring process and completing the I-9 with Heidi, if I wanted to show her my driver's license, and maybe my driver's license I showed her expired on April 18th, she could accept it. Why? Because on the face of the document, it expired on or after March 1st. On the flip side of that, if an individual shows you a driver's license and it expired on January 3rd of last year, you couldn't accept it. Why? Because that was before March 1st. When it says and not otherwise extended by the issuing authority, the next slide I'm going to show you is an extension of this right here, but the only difference is it's going to state it was extended by the issuing authority. So what does it mean? Let's say that Heidi in California, I showed her my driver's license in California. It was expired. It expired after March 1st. She could accept that. When it says not otherwise extended by the issuing authority, Heidi would check the California DMV offices and see if there's any guidance in regards to expired driver's license. On the California DMV site, and I don't know, okay, I can't speak for each state, but let's say California, it does say, or it doesn't provide any guidance on the expired driver's license. Yes, we're automatically extending those out 180 days or through the end of the year, whatnot, okay? If it does not provide any information extending that I-9, this is how you would complete. Write the information on the I-9 for that expired List B document. So look at the two bold print items there, subparagraphs. The first one says, when your employee provides a List B document not extended by the issuing authority, how do you handle that? Look at the three bullets there. She could accept my expired driver's license, right? My Social Security card. For the driver's license, she would record the document information in Section 2 under List B, just like she normally would for a driver's license. The second comment says, enter the word COVID-19 in the additional information block. That's all Heidi needs to do. Enter that. Now, the third bullet, let's read that, then I'm going to break it down. It says, within 90 days after DHS's termination of this temporary policy, the employee will present a valid unexpired document to replace the expired document presented when initially hired. Boy, that's a mouthful, but let's break that down. So once again, if I provide her that expired driver's license, as long as it expired on or after March 1st, she can accept that. Under List B, she would write the information in the driver's license. The second bullet comment, in the additional information block, she's going to write COVID-19. Now this third block. It says, within 90 days after the DHS termination of this temporary policy. Let's stop there. Well, Dave, when's the policy going to be terminated? I don't know. How are you going to keep up with when that policy is terminated? You're going to remember, you're going to be checking I-9 Central related news. And if I were you, I would be checking that link once or twice a week to see when that policy is going to be terminated. So let's say, and once again, please don't read into this. I am just writing this down. Okay, I'm going to use as an example. Okay, let's say the policy expired 1 February. Once again, please do not read into this. Dave doesn't know anything. Okay, I've asked our policy team that talks to, hey, what's the status? You know, I don't know anything. I'm using this for illustration purposes. So let's say that temporary policy where you can accept an expired driver's license it is terminated on 1 February. So that statement says within 90 days after DHS's termination of the policy. If the policy terminated on 1 February, take 90 days from 1 February, that would be what? March, April, May. That would be May 1st. Yeah, let's not get into what day. February only has 28 days, 30, whatnot. Let's say May 1st. So now that we have the termination date of 1 February, we've added 90 days, 1 May. Now let's revamp that system. By May 1st, the employee, me, that provided Heidi my expired driver's license, by May 1st, I need to provide her a valid unexpired document to replace that expired driver's license I provided. Maybe within those 90 days, and it can be all the way up to the 90th day, maybe I'll provide Heidi a renewed driver's license. Maybe in that 90 days after this temporary policy had terminated, that the California driver's license office has reopened. I've been able to go in and get my new driver's license. Hey, if I want to show her that, that's fine. Maybe I might want to show her a different List B document. Doesn't have to be the driver's license by any means, and you can't tell the employee which List B document to provide. That's how you would document that. Within those 90 days, when I do provide a valid document to replace that expired one that you temporarily could accept, look at the second bold print subcomment. When the employee later presents, when Dave presents Heidi that unexpired document, what does Heidi do on the I-9? 2 comments. Heidi, in the additional information field, she records the number and other required document information from the document that I provided. If I provided her a renewed driver's license, then in the additional information field, she's just going to write the information from my renewed driver's license that I went and got. If I provide her a different List B document, you're going to write all the information from that document, just like you would in List B. What is the document title? Who issued it? Is there a document number? When does it expire? If it has an expiration, etc. And then the second bullet comment, initial and change and date the change. Meaning initial and date, the date that you saw that unexpired document, and that you entered that information there in section 2. Now, you'll see the notes down below. The first note, I kind of touched on that a while ago. It says it's best if the employee can present a replacement of the actual document. ICE says, yeah, it's best if you provide a driver's license and expired List B. When you showed an unexpired, yeah, it's best if you show the driver's license, but you don't have to. Okay? We cannot direct you to, because that's the policy of the I-9. The second bullet comment there on the bottom where it says, E-Verify participating employers should use the employee's expired List B document number from Section 2 of the I-9 to create the E-Verify case within 3 business days of the date of hire. Yes, what this is saying, for those of you that use E-Verify, hey, I can't accept an expired document on the I-9 to run an E-Verify case, but temporarily you can due to this temporary policy change. You might say, well, if you accept it on the I-9, when I go to run the case in E-Verify, E-Verify is not going to allow me to enter a document with an expired date. Yes, E-Verify is. You would just go ahead and run the case as you normally would. Some of the follow-up questions we've gotten is, Dave, if we run that case in E-Verify with that expired List B document, and it comes back employment authorized, let's say it does that mean when you go back and you provide us an unexpired List B document, as we're stating here on this slide, does that mean that I need to go back and rerun a case in E-Verify? No, you don't. Remember, once you run the case and come back employment authorized, you're not going to run it again. So that's the temporary policy change for those List B documents, that you can accept temporarily an expired List B document for the I-9. Now, this next slide is the same thing that we just looked at on the previous slide. The only difference is, look there on the second sentence of the top of the slide. where it says, and the issuing authority has extended the document expiration date. Maybe in that event that I showed Heidi my expired California driver's license, Heidi went on the California driver's license website, and it did say information about, hey, for those that have an expired driver's license, expired on or after this day because our offices are closed or whatnot, we are automatically extending that driver's license expiration date. See, they're providing information about extending the document information, the document expiration date. In the event that you do run into that with the List B document, that issuing authority has extended that document expiration date, how do you notate that on the I-9 when you accept it? Look at the bold print there in the middle of the slide. When Dave, provide Heidi that List B document where that issuing authority has extended that expiration date, what does Heidi do? 2 bullet comments. Look at the first. Heidi enters the document expiration date in section 2. The question we get, which expiration date, Dave? If they've automatically extended on their website, is it that one? No. What is the expiration date on the document I provided, that driver's license for Heidi? She enters that information right in section 2 under List B, as she normally would. But then look at the second bullet comment. In the additional information block, all Heidi's going to write is COVID-19 EXT, which means extended. Okay? Now, I know you might say, boy, Dave, you just talked a lot of information, a lot of bullet points about this information. When you get, remember, sometime later tomorrow, you're going to get a copy of this right from AccuSource. All you got to do is follow each one of these pages. Print it off and say, hey, I'm going to take a snapshot. Let me print this off. This is for those documents that we can accept. We're all working from home. This is how we complete it. For those that want to provide a List B document that is expired, look at these 2 slides. Additionally, you're going to see a phone number. Let me go ahead and provide that to you. You might want to jot this down. Get a pen or paper. Our customer service number. The number I'm about to give you, you can call Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., your time zone, with any question on the I-9 or E-Verify. It's our customer service section. Why do we say 8 to 5, your time zone? Because the call center, the number I'm going to give you, actually goes to Buffalo, New York, Lincoln, Nebraska, and Los Angeles. That number, and I'll repeat it 2 or 3 times, area code 888-464-4218. Once again, 888-464-4218. One more time, 888-464-4218. Monday through Friday, any question whatsoever on the I-9 or E-Verify, and they can assist you. There is one change on E-Verify, and we're about to wind down here in just a minute, okay? And we'll take any questions that you've chatted in. For those that use E-Verify, now if you don't use E-Verify, hey, keep your ear close to the phone right here, okay? Because I'm just going to be a minute or 2 on this one, then we're going to jump right back into the session, the rest of this information. But those that use E-Verify, there is extended time frame for taking action to resolve a TNC. What's a TNC? Just a quick reminder for those that have run cases in E-Verify and you have never received a tentative non-confirmation response back. A TNC stands for tentative non-confirmation. What does that mean? When you remember, when you run a case into E-Verify from the I-9, you're just taking the I-9 information that's on the I-9, you're transferring it into E-Verify. When you actually submit the case, which pushes all that information from the I-9 directly to the databases of SSA and DHS to make sure the information that was on the I-9 that you entered into E-Verify is matching what's in the government databases. That's the sole purpose of E-Verify, right? Now remember, close to 99% of the time, it's going to come back saying, hey, it's a match in the government databases. Now, don't think that I'm using that 99% of going, hey, look how good E-Verify is. No, that's not it at all. What we're saying is 99% of the time, the information that was put onto the I-9 that you, the employer, entered into E-Verify, when you submit that case, 99% of the time it's matching the information that's in the government databases of Social Security Administration, Department of Homeland Security. But that's not 100% of the time. When it's not 100% of the time, one of the responses you may get is a tentative non-confirmation. And it's going to, a TNC is going to come from either Social Security Administration or Department of Homeland Security. If you enter the information into E-Verify and it comes back as an SSA from Social Security Administration, a tentative non-confirmation, what is that telling you? It would be telling you that, hey, Social Security Administration tentatively cannot confirm that that individual is authorized to work because the information you enter into E-Verify is not matching in the government databases. You might say, well, what is a DHS TNC? It's the same thing, but it's DHS databases. The information you loaded from the I-9 into E-Verify is not matching the DHS databases. So with that, a little background, now let's talk about this extended time frame for taking action to resolve a TNC. Look at the bold print at the top of the slide. E-Verify is extending the time frame to take action to resolve Social Security Administration's, SSA's, TNCs, due to SSA offices are closed to the public. Yeah, remember, if you run a case in E-Verify, although 99% of the time it comes back employment authorized, in those instances, if it comes back as the response as an SSA TNC, what are you, the employee, supposed to do? Quick review. Let's say Heidi had run me through E-Verify. It came back as a tentative non-confirmation. Heidi calls me into the office. She reviews that with me on what's called the further action notice. Basically, just informs me, hey, Dave, we ran you through E-Verify, and your information that you entered on the I-9 that we entered into E-Verify, it's not matching in the Social Security databases. On that further action notice, I'm going to make a choice whether I want to take action, means, hey, something ain't right. I want to talk to SSA about this, or not take action. If I check off I don't want to take action, remember, you can terminate me right there on the spot. But if I say I want to take action, then you're going to run off what's called a referral, which is basically, in layman's terms, here, Dave, here's your instructions. Since you want to go address that issue with SSA, this is what you need to do. And on that referral, it says I have 8 government work days from the date that Heidi gave me that referral to go down to the local SSA office to start address that issue. How can I go down to SSA office if temporarily, due to COVID, SSA offices are closed? So that is the extended time frame for resolving an SSA TNC. If Heidi was to run me through E-Verify, it came back as an SSA TNC. I can't go down to SSA within 8 government work days because they're closed. So what does Heidi do? I set in an interim case status, meaning Heidi can't take any adverse action against me. She can't put me on administrative leave. She can't give me another job to do temporarily until I get this squared. Remember, there's some common reasons why you might receive a TNC in E-Verify. Somebody in your company that ran the E-Verify case, maybe they made a typo. Maybe an individual maybe had just recently changed their name right before you hired them, but they forgot to go down to SSA office, just an administrative oversight, and submit a name change. One such scenario is when individuals get married. So just because you receive a TNC doesn't mean they're not authorized to work. There could be some valid reasons. And we've turned that 8-day clock for SSA TNCs for the employee to go address that because SSA offices are closed. You might say, well, Dave, when is SSA offices going to open back up? We don't know. How are you going to keep up with that? If you go to our E-Verify website and you click on what's new, that's just like that I-9 Central related news. Do that once or twice a week, because the minute something changes in E-Verify, we put it on that tab on our E-Verify website. That way you'll find out, ooh, Social Security offices are open back up. Ooh, here's E-Verify's guidance for those individuals that have received TNCs that they couldn't act on it because SSA offices are closed. That's how you're going to keep up with that. Additionally, you have the customer service number, but first look on E-Verify there on I-9 Central's website first. Okay? That's exactly what we've covered right here on this slide. That's the only temporary policy change in regards to SSA. We're winding down right here with here in just about 2 minutes. Here is a roll-up of some of the items that we've just talked about. The first, second, and last items that you see on the slide. The first one was those, remember, employers where you're working remotely, you're still hiring individuals, you need to complete the I-9 where you can accept a copy of their document temporarily, although when you resume business operations, you're going to have to physically examine the document or documents I showed you. There's the hyperlinks to that. That's right to our website. Look at the next one, renewal of the List B documents. Those were the next two slides we talked about. Hey, if an individual wants to show you a List B document, as long as it expired on or after, March 1st, you could accept it. Exactly how you handle that and address that and notate that on the I-9. The third and fourth item is for individuals that have H-2A workers. I don't have too many individuals that have H-2A workers to attend our session, so I don't go into great detail on these, but these are information that you want to take a look at. And the last item on the slide, we just looked at that one temporary change, policy change due to COVID on the E-Verify because of SSA offices being closed. Hyperlinked information. Do take a look at that information. Here's that customer support. Here's that phone number. I told you, even though jot it down, you're going to see it. Remember, you're going to get a copy of this presentation sent to you by IQSource tomorrow. 888-464-4218. Look at the website addresses down below. I've talked about I-9 Central and E-Verify. There's those websites. We can actually go to each one of those. I recommend, once again, go there once or twice a week at least. On the I-9 Central website you see right there, when you go there on the home page, look on the left-hand side, and one of the first tabs on the left, I think there's only 10 tabs on the left column there, where you can click on, hey, related news to E-Verify to find out the most current changes. If you go to the E-Verify website, when you go on that, simply click About E-Verify on the top home bar, and then you can click on What's New, okay? With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Heidi for some additional comments, and then we're going to have some questions, and we'll close out today, okay? Heidi?
Thank you, Dave. Now we will dedicate the remainder of the webinar to addressing attendee questions. If you have not had a chance to ask a question via our chat box, please feel free to do so now.
Thanks, Heidi. The first question that we have for you, Dave, is if my DMV has reopened, am I no longer authorized to accept expired driver's license?
And that's exactly where you'll need to look into your state and see if the DMV has been opened, okay? If the DMV is opened back up and they can go in there, then you can accept the temporary policy. Accept the document on that, okay? Now, what I will tell you, and let's back up here. I do want to look at one item. Bear with me. Okay. All right. And let me stand corrected. Okay. The key, because that's what I want to look back on. You see here on the slide, so the question was asked, hey, Dave, one of our DMV offices open back up. Can I accept one? Okay. And the correct answer, and I stand corrected, is yes, you can. As long as under that first bold print when it says your employee provides a List B document not extended, no, look at the third that bullet comment. Within 90 days after DHS's termination of this policy. So let's say California now, let's say effective yesterday, opened up their DMV offices. I-9 with me today. I show her my expired driver's license. Heidi goes on the website and says, hey, but the DMV offices are open. But she can still accept it. Why? Because look at the bullet comment there. Within 90 days after DHS's termination of this policy, the employee must. So if this policy hasn't been terminated, what you're going to find out by staying onto the I-9 Central's related news site, if it hasn't been terminated, and remember from the date of the termination, you would add 90 days, and it's after that 90 days then that you could no longer accept that, okay? But yes, in that scenario, yes, you can. And that's why I wanted to go right back to that. Okay. Hopefully that answers that. Back to you, Heidi.
All right, Dave, we got another great question. It says, how should we handle the situation when we verified I-9 remotely and an employee was terminated before we returned to normal operations, and there is no option to physically examine the I-9 docs?
And that's a great question. Simply write in the additional information block, hey, an individual quit or was terminated on this day, no way to follow up with examination. Okay. But great question. Okay. Now, let me go ahead and put this out here as well. We have lengthy conversations with ICE, and I'm lucky enough to be able to sit on our bi-weekly meetings that we have between our policy team and ICE in regards to some of these policy changes. Sometimes when individuals are reading the exact language on the instruction, whoa, Dave, if I don't write it just like that, or in this instance where, hey, Dave, an individual quit, how do I notate that? If I don't write it a certain way in certain verbiage, are they going to write me up? No, we've talked to ICE about that, and ICE has said, hey, we understand that, okay? Your key is write the circumstances in those instances and just write it in the additional information block, okay? So hopefully that helps you out there. So with that, back to you, Heidi.
Perfect. The next question that we have is, since March, we have had hundreds of new hires. Once we resume normal operations, how do you verify all the documents within 3 days?
And I understand that, and that's a question that we've received. And remember, we are actually messaging ICE's policy. So everything that is coming out is from ICE's policy. We have posted that back to them, realizing the longer that this policy was in effect, the larger pool of people that may be completing the I-9 remotely using that temporary policy, that certainly when individuals resume business operation, it might be a larger pool to be able to complete in 3 days. ICE's stance, as it stands right now, that 3 days is a hard date, that employers must be able to resume, once you resume business, check those documents within 3 days. But I have to tell you, please keep up with I-9 Central's related news, because things may change, things may be tweaked. Remember, this temporary policy with ICE states where you can accept these copies of documents. That policy is in place through January 31st. Is ICE going to come out and extend that more time and tweak their policy? That's how you're going to keep up with things on I-9 Central, okay? But the short answer to the question, ICE has said 3 days after you resume business operations, okay? Back to you, Heidi.
The next question that we have is, what if we encounter an expired List A document?
There is no temporary policies with expired List A documents, okay? So the only thing that we have with the expired documents is the List B document, all right? Now, there's certain instances, if individuals have various documents where they may have requested a permanent resident card, they haven't received it back yet, and there's some extensions of this or that, you have to look on the I-9 Central site and look at that related news, because there are individuals, certain circumstances where, hey, right now, due to this or that, there is a temporary policy or a temporary change on that. But just to say, hey, an individual showed us a passport and it's expired, can we accept that? There's no changes out for that, okay? The key, once again, the key is, because I can relay something to you today, and tomorrow, next, or the following day, USCIS or ICE might come out with something else, an update or a tweak to a policy, or a new policy come out, and the first place we're going to put it is on I-9 Central and E-Verify what's new. So do keep up with those sites, okay? Back to you, Heidi.
Thanks, Dave. We're almost at the end of the time, so this will be the last final live question. Again, attendees, if you entered a question into our chat box and we didn't have the opportunity to address it live, our team will follow up with you directly post-webinar to post an answer to you. The last question that we have, Dave, is there any exception for current employees who are status 4, alien, authorized to work, whose employment authorizations documents have expired?
And that's where there are a host of items, and please bear with me. I could spend a lot of time, into this question and go into great length. But for those that this question applies to, I cannot stress enough. Go on I-9 Central, look at I-9 Central's related news. There are items that have changed where individual documents that have expired, and because of COVID, maybe they can't get in to get those completed right now, or they have a backlog, and USCIS at times then says, hey, because of that backlog, we have to then extend various things for I-9 purposes and all. Take a look at the I-9 Central. Look at the related news. Scroll through that. It's archived information. And some of that stuff has just come out. When I say some of that stuff, relating to various documents that have just been extended, given an additional extended time if they have submitted an application or renewal or whatnot, is in the I-9 Central related news. So do look at that, okay? Back to you, Heidi.
Thank you, Dave, for facilitating this informative webinar, and special thanks to our attendees for joining us today.